you're right. I said the same thing, Steve.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for this important press conference for our first responders. I'm State Senator Randy Volokowicz, Chairman of the Senate Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee. Joining me are my fellow chairman, Senator Jay Costa, Representative Steve Barrar, Representative Chris Sonato, members of our Fire and EMS Working Group, including State Fire Commissioner Tim Solobay and Dick Gibbons, Director of the Bureau of EMS in the Department of Health, and fellow members of the General Assembly. In 2003, our friend and former Senator Mike Wall introduced Senate Resolution 60. SR 60 called for a special commission to study and make recommendations on improvement in the delivery of fire and EMS services in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. In 2004, the SR 60 Commission put forth 23 recommendations. Last year, we convened this working group to review the status of the SR 60 recommendations. A lot of hard work was done. We saw that many of those recommendations were completed. All of the recommendations saw some activity. Some had good results, some require more attention. Most recently, the General Assembly passed and Governor Wolf signed into law Act 172 of 2016, which allows municipalities to provide a tax credit to our first responders based on EIT or property tax. Despite the work that was done, there remains a number of challenges for our fire and EMS. The most important challenge we face is the drop in number of volunteers from about 300,000 in the 1970s to only 50,000 today, and that number may be even a little lower than that. Furthermore, the cost of fire apparatus has grown. It can now cost over $1 million for a ladder truck. As Chief Don Kunkel has said, that's a lot of chicken barbecues. Just try doing the math, the fundraisers. EMS providers are also facing challenges which include inadequate payment or no payment at all for services in some circumstances. They also face training and retention issues. We're here today to announce the reboot of the SR 60 study. It is our intention to continue a comprehensive review of what was accomplished and what is still needed in terms of our fire and EMS. While the review process continues, we have identified 16 important issues that we plan to move forward with immediately. On the top of our list, and certainly a priority for our fire commissioner, is the establishment of online training for first responders. With the countless hours that are needed to become a firefighter, enabling the fire commissioner to offer online training will save our municipalities, fire companies, and first responders valuable time and money. Whether it is through an appropriation, grant funding, or another funding source, we intend to implement online training in the Fire Commissioner's office this session. We're also planning to transfer the administration of fire relief funding from the Office of the Auditor General to the Fire Commissioner. When this program was created, the Office of Fire Commissioner did not exist. The Fire Commissioner has the capability to administer this program. It does not make sense for the Auditor General to administer and audit the same funds. This will enable fire companies to go through one less state agency when applying for state funding. Now, time is limited today, but we're trying to get some key people in here to put some perspective on what we're trying to accomplish. So I'm now going to turn the mic over to Chairman Barrar from the House Committee, Veterans and Emergency Preparedness Committee. Representative Barrar.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon. The issue of retention and recruitment of volunteer first responders and funding issues of today have created a crisis that currently threatens the sustainability of our fire and emergency medical services throughout the Commonwealth. We're planning a reboot of former Senate Resolution 60 that will provide the legislature with an opportunity to examine legislation that will have a positive impact on the future of fire and emergency medical services community. Having heard specific concerns that have been repeated for years from volunteers and professional firefighters, we already have numerous ideas on how to protect the emergency services that keep Pennsylvania communities safe. A bill sponsored by Rosemary Brown would lessen the demand a volunteer firefighter faces on their time. By creating a program for certified public accountants to assist volunteer fire companies with their financial records in exchange for continuing education credits. We need our volunteer firefighters to focus on the important job of protecting our communities and less time doing paperwork, and this bill would better position them to do that. Representative Jerry Knowles drafted legislation that would award tax credits to companies that allow their employees who volunteer as firefighters to respond to an emergency call during work hours without losing anything from their paycheck. Permitting these men and women to leave without losing pay or possibly their job is certainly a step in the right direction. Representative Chris Dush has an important bill that would help to reimburse volunteer fire companies fairly for the services they provide. It would allow fire companies to recoup reasonable cost for their equipment and materials used during an emergency response. Other legislation that's been that we plan to consider as subcommittee chairman of the Security and Emergency Response Committee is Representative Frank Ferry, who has a bill that would allow volunteer fire relief funds to be used for small retirement programs for firefighters. This is a minor gesture, given the countless hours of valuable service our volunteer firefighters provide, which is estimated to be a cost of about $6 billion per year. As a former EMT himself, House Agriculture Chairman Marty Calzer so far has drafted 2 bills that would help emergency medical service communities. The first would increase the amount medical assistance pays when a Medicaid recipient receives services from an ambulance company. The current amount paid is embarrassingly low, and the payment provided by medical assistant must better meet the actual cost incurred by the ambulance company. Chairman Calzer's second bill would increase 2 fines, 2 of the fines that are currently help to fund the emergency medical service in Pennsylvania. Fines from moving violations and driving under the influence have been uniformly have not been increased since the 1980s, known as MSALT funds. Okay, they are key funding source. And another source of our committee is looking at to find more revenue for a vital funding tool for the Commonwealth, which is the current $30 million annual program for the Fire and Emergency Service Grant Program. Our goal would be to find $5 million additional this year to put into that program. That program has done a lot to help our fire companies with some of the costs that they incur. You know, and I was proud to draft the bill that would require insurers to reimburse for services provided when an individual receives emergency treatment for an ambulance unit, but is not transported to the hospital at that point. Under current law, an ambulance can only be reimbursed when they transport a person to the hospital. That's just a few of the bills we're looking at. I can tell you what, as I'm watching all the co-sponsor memos that are coming out, there are dozens and dozens. We're hoping this year that we can get a lot of this accomplished. Thank you. Chairman Sinato?
Thank you, Chairman Polakovich and Barar. I'd like to echo my fellow chairman's comments. Our commitments to help Pennsylvania's first responders is certainly clear as we stand here today. As my fellow chairman noted, we've already begun to develop several tools in the toolbox for Pennsylvania's first responders. It is my hope that they are able to use these tools to sustain Pennsylvania's fire and EMS services. One of the original recommendations from SR 60 that I plan to address is loan forgiveness for Pennsylvania's emergency first responders. In the near future, I will be introducing a bill just to do that. Protecting and serving our community is something that should be commended and supported. We as legislators recognize that forgiving part of higher education loan balances is just one way to show our appreciation for those in emergency medical services community. Also, our volunteer firefighters and EMS personnel risk their lives each day to protect the well-being of others, often witnessing horrifying scenes. In order to combat the effects of PTSD and suicides on first responders, Representative Tina Davis and Representative Mike Schlossberg have introduced a bill to create Emergency Workers Mental Health Commission. This commission will be tasked with creating a telephone hotline, internet website, and peer-to-peer network to support emergency workers, as well as establish a network of mental health providers to provide counseling service to Pennsylvania's first responders. Subcommittee Chairman Ferry is also in the process of developing legislation to address the issue of workers' compensation coverage via the PA State Insurance Fund. Since the enactment of Act 46, otherwise known as the Cancer Presumption Law, there has been complaints regarding SWIF, including de facto insured municipalities and fire companies. Representative Ferry's proposal will seek to remedy these issues. Lastly, we're looking to introduce legislation which will include career firefighters in the Volunteer Loan Assistance Program and adequately fund the program, as $9 million was removed from the fund in 2015. As Chairman Brar noted, there are only a few issues that have come as a result of our numerous conversations and meetings regarding SR 60. I'm eager as we move forward to begin to focus on these ideas to provide Pennsylvania first responders with the support that they need and deserve. Thank you.
I'd like to now introduce my co-partner in the Senate and my good friend, Senator Jay Costa.
Thank you very much, Senator Vlahovic. I want to thank Representative Brar, Representative Sonato, as the fellow chairpersons of the committee who've been tasked. And I want to thank our chairs for bringing this very, very important conversation back to the forefront, where it's been dormant for a number of years. And I just want to be able to say just a few things, that how important it is that we have this conversation and that we take steps to be able to do what needs to be done to support the work of the men and women who every day go in our communities and protect and serve us. Our EMS folks, our fire and response folks, it's important that we provide them with the tools to be able to do the job well, which they do now, but we need to always evolve with the times, but also being able to take steps to be able to recruit individuals, men and women who we need to have part of the conversation, who need to be part of the services that we provide. That, to me, is very, very important, and we need to take additional steps to be able to make sure that we accomplish that. So thank my colleagues for being here and supporting this particular program. I look forward to the conversation that's going to take place over the next several weeks and many months to allow us to be able to bring to fruition some of the things that I think are desperately needed here in this Commonwealth. And I look forward and I'm very proud to be a part and to be able to stand with the men and women who are behind me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just before we get into some questions, if you have them, we have a lot of expertise up here. And I just would like to close by making a statement about these two committees that we have in the House and the Senate. You will not find a group of more committed people than this group here, These people are very dedicated. This is not one aisle against the other side of the aisle. We are all committed to doing this. I assure you, this is not a press conference just to satisfy certain rumblings or just act like we're doing something. We intend to get things accomplished. And this group here that we got together, we're going to get some things done. And we recently passed Representative Barrar's bill on the 911, the PSAPs, the emergency centers, which was a great piece of legislation. I was proud to be part of that. All the players were at the table. We worked through all the things. We made the compromises, and it's working very well together. We intend to do and have the same type of relationship on working on the special interests for our volunteer firefighters and EMS. I come from a police background. I've worked with all these people firsthand. I know the sacrifices they make. So what would I ask of the press is a little special favor. Start doing some human interest articles about the people who work in EMS and the fire community, both paid and volunteer. I can tell you there's a special place in their heart, and it's hard to put a thumb on. You sometimes wonder where the strength comes that they continue with the hours and the dedication, the inconvenience, the hard service, the trials and tribulations of what you see. When you're in the line of work with police, fire, EMS, you see some horrible things, and you take them home. You know, I've lost some people that I know in fires. I've lost people in accidents. It's a terrible thing you take home with you. First thing I'm sure they do is the first thing that I did when I got home late for my shift and something bad happened. Walked into the rooms of my kids, made sure they were in good shape, gave them a little kiss, and then stayed up for hours thinking about the terrible thing that the families are going to go through in the aftermath. These people see it all the time. They leave their tables for dinner. They leave their picnics that they have, their parties. They leave their beds. They leave work. They make a lot of sacrifices to help people. And now they're simply telling us, we really need some help. They've been telling us for a while. And part's our fault. We turned somewhat of a deaf ear, but we're not now. We're committed to this. I expect them to hold our feet to the fire, that we get things done and help them and listen to what they have. So we as a group are committed to that. I would just like to, we got some people up here can answer some questions for you. Are there any questions about anything that we discussed here today from the media?
Is there anything that, any of the incentives or efforts that have been made in the past and that have become law, have you seen that having any kind of an effect on the number of folks that are volunteering to perform these vital services?
Tim, you want to answer that?
Sure. The tax credit bill that was passed just last session, we are in a process right now of sitting down with the Boroughs Association, Townships Association, the County Commissioners Association, and the League of Cities to develop those guidelines that they're going to follow out. So that portion hasn't moved forward yet. But you know, hopefully some of the things that were discussed today will also add to that, as Chairman Sanada said, adding more tools to the toolbox to give those incentives for either departments to utilize, municipalities to utilize, and or hopefully the legislature to utilize.
I think there's an element in here sometimes where you just get burned out. You do things and you wonder if people appreciate it. You have a small core group that will just stick with it and stick with it no matter what. We see a lot of times it's someone's son or daughter who kind of joins the fire departments, specifically them, because their father did it or grandfather did. But there's not enough of those. And I don't know that we have, if there's any definite answer to recruitment and retention. I will tell you this. It's human nature. You like not to be taken for granted. And a lot of them have put that all aside still to make that sacrifice. So whatever we do certainly will show that we appreciate those men and women who put their lives on the line, whether paid or volunteered. But the volunteers, they're a special breed. And I don't think the average public realizes the amount of money it would cost them to provide the services that our volunteer organizations do. I don't think they have a clue. And I can tell you the local governments would not be able to afford it. And all they're asking for is a little bit of help in certain areas to help them do their job. And they consider it a job. They consider it a career in volunteerism. But the numbers have certainly dropped. You can see that from 300,000 in the 1970s to, 50,000. And I don't know if 50,000 is even a good number. It may be lower than that. But it's time to address these issues and try to do what we can. And sometimes good things will come out of all these little things you do. But I can tell you one thing. It will show them that we care. And human nature needs to feel that. Any other questions? Is there, I don't know if anybody from EMS, where? Dick, did he leave? Come over here. Oh, Dick, is there anything, comments you would like to make?
Well, to first of all say thank you to both committees and to everyone that's driving these efforts, and to echo everything you've heard today. The men and women of fire and EMS are out there every single day striving to do the best they can do, and they really are just simply asking for your support and asking for a little bit of help, but most importantly to thank all of you folks for your ongoing efforts here, and to thank the emergency medical services and emergency services public for everything they do to make our lives better every single day. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to make comment before we close here? Anyone? Okay. We're a quiet bunch, but we like to get things done, and that's what these two committees are about. And we're going to work on these things very hard. We've got, like I said, about 16 issues we're going to work on. The reboot of 60 is basically to go over everything that's there, make sure we got our priorities in the right place. Maybe there's some things we haven't thought of yet, but it's not going to hold us back from working on this. The one thing I hate is doing study after study after study and getting nothing done. We have things here we can get done. We will do an additional study to make sure and reinforce that we're going in the right direction, make sure we don't miss things. We've got the right people here, and that's why the reboot of 6. So I think it's going to be Senate Resolution 6, I believe it's going to be. Okay, no other questions from media? All right, thank you very much. Thank you.